Welcome everyone to Wireless for Red Teams. Before we dive in, this is not going to be super technical. 20-minute time slot, I had to cut a lot of stuff out. If you have any questions after the fact, tool usage or, certain techniques, just let us know in the chat or you can reach out to me directly. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm Alex Sanders. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. While I was I did systems and network administration. Or really administration of anything with a processor. Currently, I'm a security consultant at Stack Titan. We're a boutique security firm. We do lots of different things. And I'm a firm believer in finding your niche. I have quite a few interests. Wireless, obviously, is one, physical, hardware security, OSINT, and social engineering. All right. Overview of this, I'm going to let you read through that very briefly. So the intent behind this is knowing what's out there, understanding use, and grow your team's capabilities. So if you don't know what all's out there, if the only wireless you've ever heard of is Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, you're not going to be able to leverage anything for your operations. But that's only half the battle. If there's all these different protocols out there, or there's these tools out there, but you don't really know how to leverage that or what it's being used for by the industry you're targeting, then you're not really going to be effective. And of course, these will help you grow your team's capabilities. There's several different types of wireless to take into consideration. The primary one we have is radio frequency. That's what we most commonly have. Your AM FM radio, or in business we have Wi-Fi, we have Bluetooth, we have RFID, we have all kinds of different things. Then we've got infrared light. Most people are familiar with this through TV remotes, HVAC remotes, things like that. But this is also going to be your request to exit sensors or your PIR sensors. Then you've got ultrasonic sound and visible light. Both of these have some niche applications. Off the top of my head, ultrasonic sound, you've got Google nearby that uses this for proximity, and a few other things. There's been some good research on using ultrasonic communications to inject commands. One notable paper that comes to the top of my mind is sending Hey Google or Hey Siri commands just in very high frequencies, so it's inaudible. Visible light, you've all obviously got your analog signaling that you can do with that, Morse code with a flashlight, something like that. All right, operations. You need to kind of understand how you're operating, what you're going for, what are the goals of your operation. Wireless may or may not be a primary concern. If network access isn't your long-term goal in the operation, then you may not really do a whole lot with wireless. But either way, I'm a pretty firm believer that wireless can augment your strategy, no matter what you're doing. We'll get into how a little later. As you're aware, this is wireless for red teams. A lot of the stuff that I'm talking about is not going to be applicable to your typical pen test. It could be, depends on what you're doing. But in a typical wireless pen test, you're only focusing on on Wi-Fi. Excuse me. You're doing noisy de-auth to capture a handshake. You're accessing that network and maybe running responder to get some creds and additional noisy scanning. You're probably going to be setting some stuff off. You're not really worrying about getting caught here. These have some room to improve too, but that's a completely different discussion. Red team ops, what we're here for. These are covert, whereas the pen tests are overt. You're trying not to get caught. You're worried about those alerting solutions, the logging, SIMs, WIDs, all that good stuff. These should not be Wi-Fi only. You might not even touch Wi-Fi depending on your operation. Not many of your customers are going to have a WIDs. However, the ones that are purchasing a red team op probably do. These have become more ubiquitous as more and more attention is drawn to Wi-Fi. I know Cisco has some WIDs features in some of their products. FortiGate, some of their firewall appliances have a WIDs feature. There's excellent development happening around a tool called Enzyme. Great stuff there. But the point there is deauth isn't going to fly. Those things are going to pick that up. You're going to get caught. Of note too, fuzzing WIDs is for R&D time. That's not for an op. Leave it alone. You're going to knock something over that's not going to be recoverable, or you're just going to make a bunch of noise and attract attention to yourself. Leave it alone. Beyond that, the sky's kind of the limit, or maybe not, because we're talking about wireless. All right, physical tool loadout. Before approaching an op, we want to know what tools we have to use. I have a handful of recommendations, but getting started for Wi-Fi, I have 3 primary alpha adapters that I recommend. The one on the left there is the 036 ACH Gen 2. You're probably familiar with null byte blogs or medium blogs talking about using the alpha 036 ACH to do your Wi-Fi pin testing. That is typically geared towards the Gen 1, which uses a USB 3.0 micro B, which is that kind of a dual connector. This uses a USB-C connection. The reason I recommend this one over the other is I've had a lot of issues with the other ones causing crashes or just plain not working. The one in the middle there is the AC 1900. Got 4 antenna slots for multi-input, multi-output. It's compatible with a lot of different protocols, and it's been a good solid workhorse for me. Then that last one is one of their newest, the AXML, which supports Wi-Fi 6E. For those not familiar, the Wi-Fi 6E standard, not Wi-Fi 6, supports the 6 gigahertz operating frequencies. And then, of course, you've got an extra antenna there. NFC rings. These are not going to be viable for every single operation, but I've included them because of their small form factor. So the one on the left there that has 2 different NFC antennas on it. You could host payloads here. You can host URL. A lot of people leave NFC on by default on their phones. Quick tap, if it's left unattended and unlocked, you can launch that website or any number of things. Your imagination really is the limit. And the one on the right, that is the NFC ring Omni. They market that as the most hackable ring ever. It actually runs a full JVM. So the limitations of that are your understanding of Java and the API of your mobile device operating system. Some more gear here: Bluetooth low energy, SDR, GPS. SDRs of various types are kind of going to be your bread and butter here. Multi-protocol doesn't really matter. It's up to you to use the appropriate tooling there. Bluetooth, basically any long range that supports an antenna like that XDO class 1 that you see second from the right. Then your Bluetooth low energy, of course, an Ubertooth, and then that one in the bottom right-hand corner is a Blue Fruit for passive BLE reading, and a GPS dongle for location. Small form factor cellular devices. This is a 6 fab base hat for a Raspberry Pi. Whether you need out-of-band comms or you're working with some IoT applications in an environment that you need to do some 4G, maybe 5G stuff. Yeah. You could also add stuff like a hack RF or a USRP to your kit. Those are all great. Digital tool loadout. GQRX to start with. If you're looking at a signal or looking for a specific protocol and don't happen to know exactly what frequency it's operating on, GQRX, go through and find it. There's automated scanning tools out there, but I like using that one. Generally, you can do some OSINT and figure out what operating bands your stuff is on. Then you've got the Aircrack suite, your Wi-Fi tools. You're not really going to use a whole lot of that on a red team engagement. That's more for passive listening. Proof of concept code for exploits. There's all kinds of different stuff out there other than just deauthing Wi-Fi. So it's good to have that new tool belt. RTL 433, this is going to be in conjunction with your SDRs. There's lots and lots of built-in decoders for custom equipment. Some that I've seen that is directly relevant here is some security tools. Some physical security devices will transmit on 433 or 315 megahertz, and you'll be able to see if those systems are armed, disarmed, and depending on the system, maybe manipulate that. PagerMon and Multimon NG, that's for your pager comms. I'll get into that in a little while. All right, so starting point farther away. Like I've talked about, you need to know what's out there and how it's being used. Start applying some SIGINT concepts or signals intelligence concepts. What all is out there? Take a look, see what your client is using. Obviously you've got your door readers that might be in use. You've got Wi-Fi networks. You may have company issued phones that have Bluetooth, NFC enabled. Is it a hospital? You're going to have pagers. Is it some kind of tech startup, some kind of new fancy agricultural startup, that's using some 5G applications? Just take a look, see what's there, apply those concepts. You want long range equipment for a lot of this? Get away from the target. Get away from the target. If you don't have to be up close and personal, don't. Like I've mentioned before, don't get stuck on Wi-Fi. There's plenty of other stuff out there. Reconnaissance and intel. This is where we're going to have a lot. We're starting to have a lot more fun. I mentioned pagers a moment ago. You've got hospitals that use pagers. You've got a few other industries that use these. You've got POC, SAG, and Flex, your primary protocols. You can use something like PagerMon to go through and actually read what's in the air. It's all unencrypted as it's being transmitted. Doesn't mean it's not going to be encrypted when it leaves the device. So here's an example, an ER door code to get in and the code to get out. Gate and door code for a subdivision. Keep in mind also that this is not all going to be directly relevant to your target. So pay attention to what you're using there. Tracking security. Physical security guards can be a nightmare on an operation like this. You don't always know where everyone's going to be, especially in a large organization. Maybe you're operating on a campus rather than just a single building. You've got roving security everywhere. You may be just one or two people out there on this engagement. It might be useful to listen in on the radio comms. Are they suspicious of two people hanging around outside the perimeter? You've got a few different protocols you can listen in on: FRS, GMRS, MURS. That's your typical two-way radios that a lot of security companies are going to use. Trunk radio, that's mostly going to be police, fire, emergency medical services, but you don't know what some of the higher end people are going to be using. You can use an SDR for all this stuff. Then you can also take TPMS data from fleet vehicles for security. This is direct TPMS. There's two different kinds of TPMS. I'm not going to get into all that, but this is going to be direct TPMS that emits RF. You can use the IDs emitted from that, as well as some GPS equipment and some code, do some calculations and track their positions on the campus so that hey, they're nice and far away. Now's a good time to attempt our exploit. Application-specific implants. The first thing that comes to mind here is RF-controlled gates and doors. Of course, there's probably a million other ways to get in, but if you've got a ton of goals, you're in a time crunch, or you're scoping out other parts of your engagement still, you can build something out with an ESP32 CC1101 antenna and maybe a LoRa device for comms back to you. Sit there and listen. Just drop something out in the grass next to a gate, somewhere inconspicuous. Place it and wait for data. It'll be sent back to you, and then you'll have kind of a pre-auth. If you know the gate code, or if you're able to replay the data that was sent, then that's a little bit pre-auth that makes it look like you're supposed to be there. Exploitation, fun stuff. Bluetooth and Bluetooth low energy. These are not the same. Not going to get into details of that, but no, there is a little bit difference between those two protocols. There's lots of great research in this area lately. Of note, recently, Mark Newland's research leading keystroke injection, or just force pairing with a HID device. His repo demonstrates injecting keys with a fake Bluetooth device, or with a fake keyboard, excuse me. But my understanding is this is not limited to HID. I've got some code I'm working on to emulate swipes and taps and stuff like that. It's pain. I'm not a programmer. There's another guy that's doing a lot of excellent research here. Cross transport attacks between Bluetooth and Bluetooth Low Energy. That's going to be on the same chip, just slightly different protocols. Lots of man-in-the-middle potential there. One of the things that comes to mind here is access controls. There's a certain financial institution that I know of that uses ACE ABLE readers, which you can use Bluetooth Low Energy to access the facility. So if you've got man in the middle there, that'd be a good way to get in. Talked about get away from Wi-Fi. Not all of this is Wi-Fi, but I've got to appease those wanting Wi-Fi here. My approach here for a red team op would be to have more than one wireless rig for Wi-Fi. Set up a passive listener on at least one device. If they've got WPA2 personal in use, WPA3 personal in use, start doing some scanning, see if they've got management frame protection compatibility or required in those headers. If it's required, you need to look at some WPA3 attacks. If it's compatible, but it's not required, then you can do some downgrade attacks and get it to WPA2. Enterprise auth, Wi-Fi phishing kits. There's a ton of them out there. You could homebrew your own. You could do a multitude of things here. Then we've got printers. I'll get into that in a second. But a pro tip here is, what do you need? Do you need network access? Do you need data about a specific user or application? There's probably a way to do it with Wi-Fi. And there's some additional Wi-Fi exploits that I've provided at the bottom of the slide. Hopefully I'll be able to make this presentation available afterwards. Printers. A lot of these have Wi-Fi Direct, even the enterprise ones, and it uses WPS under the hood. There's typically not any kind of EDR or antivirus attached to these things. Security tooling is probably not set up to monitor your printers. However, some of these are tied into LDAP. So you've got authentication relaying and targeted hash retrieval, then you can pivot into domain. If you're able to do some Wi-Fi Direct and do that relaying. Another attack vector here is company issued bones. I kind of mentioned the NFC piece earlier. A lot of people leave this on by default, even if it is enterprise equipment. You can have payload on that ring. Like I said, with that Omni, especially if you're great at Java and understand the internal API for NFC on iOS or Android, then it's at your mercy. Bluetooth Low Energy attacks, as mentioned. There's some ultrasonic sounds that you could potentially leverage. All right, operation comms. You can use wireless for your operational comms. Maybe you've got more than one operator on site, and you need to send data to one another. Of course, you got your cell phone. You can use Signal or something like that. You could also use a low device, or you could use wireless to exfiltrate data that you're getting. Build a hardware implant, drop it in the network once you've accessed the facility, and then send everything out over cellular. That's something that the Stack Titan team actually did on a real op recently. Chris took apart a surge protector and threw a Raspberry Pi and some other components in there, and got some good access that way. We've got that written up at our Rift blog in 2 parts. It's full step-by-step, full bill of materials, everything that you would need to replicate that. Last thing I have for everybody that's attending is a call to action. We need more research, more proof of concept development, and homebrews of existing code. Not everything has been maintained that's been put out there, and not everything that has been identified with a vulnerability has any kind of proof of concept code. We need to be developing code and toolkits for this stuff. That way we can actually leverage it, just like we would for vulnerabilities on an internal engagement. And overall, do better for your clients. There's way more that you can be approaching in your engagements, whether it's red team op or it's a pen test. You just need to do better. With that, that's the end of my presentation, and I guess we'll open it up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. Appreciate you taking the time. Yeah, I know Eric was like totally getting into it. I could tell.
Yep.
He's taking notes and looking up stuff for sure.
Yeah, yeah, man. It'd be great to have a bigger time slot. I really appreciate what I've been given, but there's a lot that I was cutting out of there. Maybe I'll be able to do the full thing at a at another time.
Yeah, yeah, we could definitely reach back out and we can set up like another session where you can
So
get a little bit more time for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Looks like a lot of people loved it as well outside of us. So like chat was blowing up. Few questions here. You want me to go ahead and read through them, or also in the Zoom, there's the Q&A.
here's one for you. Does
Yeah.
Wi-Fi Pineapple still work as well as in the past, in your
Um,
opinion?
I personally do not use a Wi-Fi pineapple, but from the operators that I've spoken to that do use pineapples, they've kind of abandoned it, and it's more of a demo tool now. Now that your mileage may vary. I don't know everybody on the planet. I don't know every single red team operator out there. That could just be the small sample set that I've spoken to. But those are getting picked up by WIDs is what I've seen. And in our pre-show banter, we were talking about this tool called Enzyme, and they've specifically got some detections written for things like a pineapple.
Yeah, I was actually checking that thing out. It's going to be something I spend a lot of time in the next couple weeks. That's for sure.
I don't know if you covered this, but and I don't even know if there's like a vector for this. But like I was just in Vegas and at MGM, and now you can get your room key on your phone to then scan into your room. And I was like, this is interesting, but like I wonder what that opens up because of that.
Yeah, if I had to guess, that's going to be operating over Bluetooth Low Energy. That's what I've seen in a couple of different applications like Marriott's and stuff like that. Um, I imagine there's some opportunity there for man in the middle. Obviously, a hotel room, there's probably not going to be anybody sitting outside waiting to do that unless you're, a high value target, high net worth individual. But yeah, I imagine that's what's going on there.
Kimberly said they've been doing digital keys for years. I guess I don't get out much because
Yeah.
I never knew that was a thing. And I was like blown away by that. I was like, that is
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, that's one thing that I've been trying to war game in my head. So essentially, you've got to be able to open your hotel app and then press the go inside of it to say, okay, I want to unlock my room. And then it enables the Bluetooth low energy, like Alex was saying, that way you could be able to transmit. So um, you would have to be pretty close, in my understanding, to be able to even, piggyback off of it or man in the middle. Because most of the time you're standing within 5 feet of your door and just reaching out with your phone in close proximity with your reader. So it'd be interesting to see how well that one could be circumvented. I imagine you'd have to compromise the phone itself.
Yeah, maybe. You definitely need to be on the same floor as the target.
You did, I believe you put info in there, and you'll have info in your slides on hardware and software for someone who wants to get started. Or do you have any suggestions for people who want to get started in some of those?
Yeah, my suggestion, despite me harping over and over again, get away from Wi-Fi, is to start with Wi-Fi. That's the most ubiquitous. That's where you're going to have the most fun starting out. But you're pretty quickly going to hit a wall if you're not super technical. Get you an alpha adapter, the AOS 036 ACH Gen 2 off of Amazon or from Rockland, which is their official distributor, and get either start targeting your own wireless access point or order some online. I've got like a full bin of just wireless routers that all do different things, different versions of like WPS, and different versions of WPA and all that good stuff.
So here's something for you because we've always seen, we were talking in a pre-show or in the actual pre-show banter about Ponagachi and things like um, the pineapple or not the flipper. Sorry, not pineapple. But do you ever like sit at your house and see some of your detectors and stuff like that go off like somebody's walking around the neighborhood? Like I'm wondering how prevalent in the metroplex population, how much these tools may be used out there in the wild.
In the wild, I'd say very, at least in my area, not at all. I live in a fairly semi-rural area. My town is actually a little bit of a tourist attraction, but I live outside of city limits. I still live in kind of a suburb. I don't ever see any alerts from stuff that's not me. However, in larger metropolitan areas, there is a little bit going on. I know I've been walking around with my Ponegashis out in town, about an hour north from me in our capital, Little Rock, and made some friends. Uh, that's one of the features of the Ponegashi is it'll detect others in the area. It's not just super common, but it's becoming more and more so, especially as people are keeping up with projects. The Ponegashi project in specific, it was kind of abandoned by the original creator, but there's quite a few folks that have forked that code and added new features and continue to maintain development. So more and more people have become interested in it. And with the proliferation of the Flipper Zero and all the marketing behind that, lots more people are getting into these small form factor learning tools and wanting to use them and kind of carrying them around everywhere with them. But there's not really just a whole lot of people running around out there with a laptop alpha adapter and some code doing some nefarious stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining and sharing all your knowledge with us today. It was very interesting. I know we'll be reaching out hopefully to get you back to share more. I know there's a few more questions, but Alex, do you have any parting words for us that you can leave everybody?
Not anything specific. I appreciate everybody who's attended. If you have any critiques, this is my first talk ever, so I'm all ears. Just try not to hurt my feelings too much. I can take a bit, but
but you did great, man. For your first talk, you did fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you.
It was good, dude.
For sure. All right. Thank y'all. We'll see you in the next session.
All right. Thanks, everyone.